Biggest user complaint about NV5 CAD configuration. Let's hear it.
Layers.
Layers. Too many layers.
Too many layers. 300 layers for every job.
All right, that's common from Joel. I expected that. What else?
That's how they started off.
That's a good start point. What's the biggest complaint? Tool pallets or your windows? Your windows moving around? It's finally fixed. All right. So this becomes increasingly important. It was literally like software code is such a pain. Like you screw up like one semicolon and your code fails. So I finally narrowed it down to the errant line and fixed it. So that will only update when I manually push out a certain update. So your daily login updates will not reset that stuff. It will hold condition. That's going to be really important with Panzura. I'm going to send out an email later today, but with Panzura, I've left my computer on the last 3 nights, and overnight, every night, it has remapped to a different Panzura controller. So you guys will basically need to either shut down your computers or make sure to check your DFS and your local Panzura connection every day. So restarting your computer or turning it off and restarting it, powering it up is going to be a pretty important workflow moving forward. So that #1 user complaint, which I refer it to, has been resolved, and it's beautiful. Some new information here on your projects. I'm going to go to just a random one, hopefully. Yes, Joel?
Can we go back to complaints for just a minute?
I would expect nothing different.
No, just I think it would be really nice to have a kind of at least a limited matrix use of what people have, what skills. Because if someone had come to me and said we needed to move this 2018 drawing with 3D objects back to 2016, I think I could have shortcutted.
Well, it hasn't been done yet, just so you know, so there's still the opportunity for you to do that.
Great. But again, you know, we had a very nice one where Ben did a fantastic rendering of, you know, a proposed bridge with, you know, photographic backgrounds and all that, and I wouldn't have known who to go to.
I agree 100%. Since you're volunteering to create such matrix, awesome. No, I'm a firm believer that the skill sets should be documented. I'm a firm believer in documentation in general, so I do like that. And that's been on my radar, just hasn't been accomplished. I've been busy with Panzura. New convention moving forward. This should be applied to any new project that is started here in this building. It is very bad practice to have the same file, a file with the same name stored thousands of times on a server, such as our system, right? How many copies of an EXMA do we have on the server? Hundreds of thousands, right? For that reason, we've had several employees unwillingly or unknowingly copy or save as EXMAs over another EXMA in the wrong job folder or something like that, right? It's happened multiple times. So moving forward, any project that you work on, any file will start with your project number. So for this one, I'm in the 61FU. Your files should all look like that. All right. Obviously, this one's kind of unique because it has the letter designation. If I'm, say, working on Artesian, which is the 305 job number, it'd just be 305_EXMA. Make sense to everybody? This way, it's undeniable what folder you're working in and what file you're saving over, whether or not it's intentional or unintentional. Am I suggesting renaming every file on the server? No. This is only going to be new policy moving forward on new projects. All right. Every file should have a unique name on our server. There's a lot of new code in AutoCAD when you start up any AutoCAD session or drawing. Sure, I'll open that file. Some things that happen, or hopefully happen, we'll see if they happen or not. Probably could have picked a simpler file to open, but. I just ran the batch. So the batch file, you'll have to run it once for the settings to take hold, and then moving forward, it will remember. All right. So I'm going to close those real quick. So one of the things that happens, hopefully happens, when I hit open, you'll notice that it opens to the folder location that my current drawing is in. Previously, it would do some past folder that you've been working in. So this is new code that I've incorporated. It will open to whatever folder you're currently in. All right, that's pretty cool. That'll help ensure that we don't save over EXMAs and put information in wrong folders as well. So this is applicable to basically anything. Let me see where my note is. This works for XREFs, eTransmit, Sheetset, Save As, Open, and Publish commands. All right, so it's a pretty useful list of things that get affected by this. So if you go to publish something, it's going to automatically, when you go to Save As, or save as your file that you're publishing for a PDF, it should actually go to the folder that you have your drawing open to. So those are all pretty useful things, hopefully.
That's just automatic?
That's automatic. It's part of the startup code now. Not the batch up, the actual startup inside AutoCAD. All right. Document control, there's a lot of things to discuss on this. Folder naming conventions, obviously, we want to try to keep the end drive as neat and uniform as possible, such as this project here that was created today. First thing to note is we don't want any -00. Second thing is anything not belonging to the San Diego office, in other words, anything not 2268, should be created on Panzura, right? So 262, that's a Northern California job, that should actually be on Panzura, all right? So hopefully I get your emails or project setup emails and we can avoid this, but just be aware that if you do need to, or if you are creating folders, which you shouldn't, please follow conventions to minimize impact of when I come in and move data or rename data. File names and folders, make sure that there's no spaces. Yes, Joel?
Are you going to start getting in here at 6 a.m. when we leave the set up?
Sure.
Thank you.
That's why I'm covering this. Yes, I realize there's going to be cases where I can't do everything.
That particular one is my
that one too. So just kind of be aware of those issues. Folder structure, try not to rename folder structures because it does screw with a lot of different things. File naming, no spaces, that interferes with the preview inside CAD Data Manager. There's a space inside the folder path or the file itself. This will not generate correctly. Use of CAD Master. I'm going to point a project out, 36 AR. We'll see if it's been cleaned up in the months since I brought this to attention. And it has. That's beautiful. Previously here, there were 5 different versions of an EXTO. Keep it simple, guys. We just need one file for each thing, right? So there was an EXTO attach, EXTO L, EXTO temp, EXTO with a date, and EXTO interim. If you go to this project and you need to work on the EXTO, anybody have any idea which one they were supposed to use? No. Even this one is still a little, this is actually cleaned up because you have an EXTO in construction and an EXTO pre-construction. So that's pretty good. The one thing I would eliminate, of course, is the spaces, right? Do dashes or underscores. All right. So be sure that you're not having multiple versions of files. Like, make up your mind. Is it all points or master points? We ran into that yesterday. In addition, something that's come up rather regularly is what do I do with the EXTO versus EXTO C3 file? For all those in the GAS group, if your project is only a couple 100 feet long, there's no need to distinguish between EXTO and EXTO C3. The only reason for this C3 designation is to keep your files manageable and quick. If your file with the surface, with everything in it, is only like 2 megabytes, by creating another file that's 2 megabytes, you're not speeding anything up. So the C3 designation for the EXTO does not necessarily need to be followed on these smaller projects, especially related to the gas group. When you're only doing a couple 100 feet of pipe replacement, go ahead and put your surface in your EXTO. Make it easier on yourselves. Creating PDFs. We've gone over this before, but anytime you make a PDF, let's say I'm in the CAD CAD Power. All right. Let's say I'm working on some of these projects. This is a gas line, plan and profile. Let's say I'm making PDFs of that document. There should be a PDF folder, and there should be a date and a quick description of what it was, what the PDF is. So make sure you're doing that. That helps us keep track of versions of the data and important milestones like Rev 1 set, Rev 2 set, because once we make changes to the documents and move to Rev 2, the information to Rev 1 is pretty much lost. So it's very important that we keep a PDF version of all of our major milestones. Same thing goes with your deliverables. Anytime you send something to a client, make sure, or a subconsultant, make sure that you're following the same basic convention of putting the client name, like SoCalGas, and then a date with a brief description of what you're sending. This ensures that we're sending our client the appropriate things at certain milestones as well. File path restrictions. I think I've briefly covered this, but I want to elaborate that in it a little bit. We are restricted to 254 characters in a folder path. It's firm folder path. And that does not just include your mapping from your main drive letter. Let's say firm, right? M, : /. It's not actually the M that it starts with. The full path to your M now is mv5.com/panzera/inf/projects/2268-sd/firm. All right, so all that counts towards your 254 character limit. All right, so it's very important that we don't create folder structures that unnecessarily take up characters. Those working on firm projects are notorious for violating this practice or principle. For an example, under received, this is a folder name. Probably don't need updates, right? Because obviously it's an update to something previously. But inside this, there's a zip folder. And what they did is they extracted that zip to a folder with the same name. And then inside that is firm deliverables. And then you can see, once the further we go, your characters start really adding up. So this whole folder really isn't necessary, right? Everything could have been zipped, unzipped to this folder here, all right? So that's about 28 characters that we could have avoided. That's over 10% of your allowable character count. So make sure that you're kind of practicing good folder structure. This becomes more and more critical with the implementation of Panzera. So, and most notably, it's usually within the receivable folder that this occurs. So just kind of be sure that you clean that up. Network pipe rules. In case you're working with pipe networks, you may get some error messages, right? We've kind of discussed this in the past. Make sure that you follow that protocol of bringing in, re-importing your pipe network rules if you're having issues creating pipe networks, all right? Hopefully we're only using new templates moving forward and that has been resolved. But for those working on older projects and older files, be sure to drag in your pipe network rules to be sure to flush out those errors. A lot of new stuff moving forward for building 2, building 5, and firm work. I've noticed that a lot of the annotation is being done in paperspace. That creates a number of issues. Not going to go into all of them, but the practice is all your annotation that can be done in model space should be done in model space, right? So when things get moved around, or if your file gets referenced into another file, you see all that annotation, right? Your paper, anything in paper space does not get XREF'd in with your XREF, right? So all those annotation callouts, be it street names, location IDs, whatever it is, that data will not exist if you XREF your file. So it's important that moving forward, all annotation that can be done is done in model space and not paper space. You're still going to have some annotation on paper space, but mainly maybe details and basic information. Anything related to the plan should be in model space. There are a couple new templates, mostly relating to mapping. So we've got a SD map, Riverside record of survey, Riverside record of survey, and also a general mapping record of survey templates now. So those in the survey and mapping group, be aware of those three new templates. There's also a mapping corner record template as well. The other new template and kind of workflow as well is SDGE overhead transmission. Why this wasn't brought up to my attention previously, I have no idea, but we've never had a template or blocks developed for overhead transmission work. You now do. So we have a new template for overhead transmission, and I'll kind of open that up as well. So overhead transmission, like you guys are kind of used to, you'll kind of see a block matrix, especially initially, so that you guys understand what's populated in this template. So we've got a lot of blocks, obviously, existing and proposed conditions for things. All these are dynamic blocks, however, don't really use the dynamic properties for them. The reason why is because your annotation bubbles change, and the only way to accomplish that is to physically create a new block for it. It is a dynamic block, but if I change it to something, sometimes the callouts don't work as they should. So don't change the dynamic properties. Just bring in the new block from your tool palette. So anytime there's a new template, there needs to be a new tool palette. So there's a new tool palette for overhead work. NV5 EC overhead transmission. So I'll click on that, and here's all the new blocks for this type of work. So we've got existing and proposed work or blocks for all these objects. Symbols, underbuild arms, all that stuff. So this is all new stuff that has been implemented in the last about 2 months. So new template for all overhead work. Yay. Block updates. For those working on distribution design, there's been one update so far, and that's the repeater antenna via Marco. So feel free to use that and implement that. That's on your overhead distribution design. For those working on underground, I'll go to underground distribution real quick. For your vaults, these have been completely kind of revamped and relooked at. I'll use the 16 because I like the 16 a little bit better. We're all aware that there's a difference between the parkway and the traffic lid. That's always fun to see different scales. No idea why that is. Oh, units are probably set incorrectly in this. So you have a better block definition for these guys, with one being the parkway lid versus the traffic related lid or rated lid. They look differently, and that is represented in the blocks now. Previously, it was not really represented. The only thing that was really represented within the traffic was the outer or the bigger top section. So now they're accurately reflecting the lid configuration. All right, so those have been updated. For those working on the distribution, that block has been revised as well. We're still going to kind of not use the real blocks, just because SDGE doesn't really want to see those. But for your manhole or handhole and manhole designation, you'll notice one major change. The 15 and the 16 previously were one block, and they looked identical, and we were getting feedback from the client of, well, what is it? Is it a 15 or 16? So these are different visibility states now for the 15 and the 16. The 15 will basically have 2 lines representing three lid openings or structures, and the 16 will have 4 lid. So that's kind of the way SDGE wants to keep track of whether or not it's a 15 or a 16 vault. All right, so just be aware of that change moving forward. There's a new LISP routine to discuss. So under AP, San Diego, this one is called text to M leader. So if we type AM, that's the command for it. So let's create some text first. That might be helpful. So there's my text, AM. All you have to do is select your text, right click, and now where do you want your M leader to start? We'll draw something like this. So it automatically converts that text and puts it inside a multi-leader. That can be pretty useful, especially when you're cleaning up somebody else's work that may not be done accurately or correctly. So rather than drawing a leader to that text, you just simply create an M leader using this LISP routine.
So the patient's name is
Text to M leader, and the command is AM. So like I've been doing here as of late, we've got a couple people to kind of reward for their contributions for helping move NV5 forward, especially for CAD. So the first one is going to go to Kenneth Months. So what did he do? Good question, right? What does that guy ever do? So a couple months ago, we noticed some errors in the profile labels for gas. And that was, I think, originally pointed out by Taewei. I said I fixed them, and I didn't fix them 100%. And Kenneth was kind enough to point out that mistake where the code did not account for every situation we would run into. It was ignoring what happens if the profile is flat or doesn't have a slope. My code did not account for that. So it was not actually factoring or labeling things correctly. So he pointed that out, and I was able to analyze that and come up with code to fix it. So I believe the code will handle all situations you can possibly throw at it, and it will label things correctly. So the two things that we're talking about is the vertical angle deflection, and as well as the overbend and sag labels. All that is automatic now for any situation that you run into. So if we change this, still a sag. So if I'm looking at this one, still a sag. If I change it like this, still a sag. Let's get crazy. That becomes a sag and that becomes an overbend. So all that stuff has been corrected to account for zero slopes. And there was also some issue with the vertical angle itself. For things that approached zero angles, it was not calculating it correctly. So that code has been completely revised, and an email has been sent out to the gas group accordingly. So if you're working on anything prior to 2 weeks ago, you'll need to bring those expressions into your drawing for them to be updated. And that has to be done manually, unfortunately. There isn't a way to replace expressions in Civil 3D yet. So they have to be manually copied. So that's the first one. Good job, Kenneth. The second one goes to a new employee. I absolutely love talking to new employees, new hires to NV5, because with them comes their experience at different companies and a kind of a fresh look at the way we do things here at NV5. So this one goes to Miguel Gonzalez. Hopefully I can con him into doing a lunch and learn. Oh, and it's not loaded on this machine, unfortunately. Oh, you noticed. Oh, you noticed. Wow, man. So there has been the most annoying thing in terms of civil engineering, more on the actual civil engineering with municipals and public works and whatnot, is the use of construction notes. And more cities and agencies are requiring to only show the list of construction notes that are applicable to that certain viewport. And so this is a procedure that takes days of mindless drafting and cleanup. So Miguel came to us via Michael Baker, and they use a program called Smart Draft. So when he approached me saying, hey, what can I do with all these construction notes? I said, manual labor. He said, why don't we get Smart Draft? And I said, okay. So NV5 has made that purchase. Unfortunately, I do not have it loaded on my laptop. So I can't demonstrate that, but it's basically a very consolidated one source for your construction notes. You can apply them across multiple drawings, and it will only list the construction notes that are applicable to that viewport. So that's the main reason why we purchased the software, and we only purchased that portion of it. Since then, Miguel has shown me some other powerful features of the software that can automate a lot of grading and annotation as well. So hopefully next Lunch and Learn will be about Smart Draft. And we'll be in negotiations with management to buy the full suite. Let me put it that way. So love hearing new ideas, especially from new employees. But anybody that has good ideas, I would love to hear them. We're always looking for ways to improve our workflows and procedures, and this is my way of rewarding you on those efforts. So Casey, thank you guys. A couple new things. A month or two ago, we had a question regarding how to bring in SDGE GIS data. There is now a workflow document detailing those procedures. So under the CAD Manual, Section G, SDGE GIS import. So if you find yourself needing to know how to bring in SDGE GIS data, this is the document that you can reference. It goes through a 9-step process on what those steps look like. The main thing is it basically deals with the coordinate system and the translation of that information into the correct coordinate zone. That's probably the biggest issue with our GIS data that we import. So follow this example and it will update that information for you, which is great. I'm not going to cover pipe labels. One other thing that I'll cover before talking a little bit about Panzura. This will probably be a separate Lunch and Learn, but be aware that anytime you bring in points, your points are going to come in according to whatever point code description key set you have set current. So to figure that out, under your tool space settings tab, point description key sets, this is the order in which it will use to set all your point data. That comes from how descriptions are handled and what layer the point gets put on. I'm currently in a gas profile or gas drawing, so we see the description key sets for the gas group. Let me switch to this one. This is kind of maybe more typical. This is a mapping one. So any block markers has an MA behind it. So that's a code set to bring in markers for just the mapping entities. So let's say iron pipes, monuments, that kind of stuff. If it has something applicable to mapping, it's going to bring that in as a block. So the point marker is going to display as the appropriate block. So when we right click on this and go to properties, lo and behold, the point markers are on top. So if we bring in a point that has a monument, it's going to be represented by the block in the point marker. If you don't want that, or if you do want that and you only want to show the blocks, you can move that above it, and it's only going to show the data that uses a block as the symbol. The reason why this is important is because then we can extract those blocks from the point and start building our base map files. So this is for mapping. Most notably done inside this building is the existing utilities, right? All that information that our surveyors pick up, we want to represent as a block in our EXUT. So this is an easy way of supporting that workflow, and I will cover that in a future lunch and learn. But that's kind of the procedure we would use to extract those blocks. So just be aware of that if you're not getting points to import correctly or as you desire, just change your point description key sets to achieve what you're looking for. And with that, I'm going to end the lunch and learn and just talk a little bit about Panzura. Do we have any firm people? One person working on firm. Three people working on firm. Yes. So this is kind of the way our drive letters are currently set up. So deployments is on K, which is Panzura. Firm is 100% on Panzura. N, which is our projects drive, is not on Panzura. I should say any project that is started here at 2268, which is San Diego, and is not being shared with other offices, still resides on your N drive. P drive is the projects for Panzura. It is interconnected to the other INF offices. Those currently on Panzura include Sacramento, San Jose, and Fresno. Manteca is not currently on Panzura. This will become more important for the power group as we continue to expand and incorporate Sebesta's offices. They will be coming into the Power Delivery Group 1, Sebesta. Their data actually gets populated to Panzura this weekend, and then their data will move. The data will be segregated with the projects in the Power Delivery Group to this folder. So more and more projects are going to be populated to Panzura, and more of you will start to work on Panzura. You'll also notice the Q drive. The Q drive is Panzura as well. So a couple things to mention. In CAD Manager, never set your folder, never add a folder to the root of anything. So if I go to P, somebody had actually set the P drive as the root. What that does is it actually starts creating files here and adds the Civil 3D folder, adds the Sofdesk folder, a lot of unintentional things that we don't want. And also that's going to bog down your system because you do not want to browse the entire P drive in CAD Data Manager. There's dozens of terabytes of data in this system, so you do not want to browse it inside CAD Data Manager. So just be aware of that, where you set your projects to, like this one. Someone did that. I can tell because this XML file that's created by CAD Manager. So be mindful of how you use the Panzura system. Biggest complaint with Panzura is that it may seem sluggish and a bit buggy. You should be able to effortlessly click between network drives on Panzura and have it instantly populate. If it doesn't, you have an issue, and that's because you're not seeing your local Panzura controller. All right, I've covered this in the past, but this is the most important thing about the system. You can simply verify that. You'll notice right away because it will not act like this. It will be very sluggish, and you'll whine to me and management. So simply right-click, go to Properties, DFS, make sure you're set to the right controller. I'm going to intentionally mess up my system. I'm going to connect to San Jose. If I click on CAD drive, you can actually see the delay. This is actually pretty good, to tell you the truth. I was expecting it to be way worse. But yeah, this is actually working pretty well, right? Let's try that again. Yeah, that actually works pretty well. But for instance, this morning when I came in, I was connected to North Carolina. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, here we go. All right, you can start to see the delay happen. Again, this is actually working better than expected, but this will be the biggest complaint in terms of it being not as responsive as you are used to.
So if you set it to the right one,
It should be.
it should stay on the right one.
It will not stay on the right one.
It will not.
All right, so that's
Like Russian roulette every day.
that is a great question, and that's the #1 mistake. People check it once, think they're good. So as I mentioned, mine has reset almost every night. If there's any disruption in our internet connection between here and the main controller up in Raging Wire, California, if there's any disturbance in that internet connection, our systems will go out and try to connect to a different Panzera controller, right? Because it doesn't want to lose connection. So it'll try to ping other controllers and connect to those other controllers. So at any point in time, your computer can have a little blip in the internet connection, right? And so at any point in the day, this can occur to you, and you will unknowingly get mapped to another controller, right? I noticed this in the very beginning of moving data to Panzera. I was connected to China, and you can imagine the internet speeds that I was getting. I set it to run overnight. I came back, and it was still at 0.01% done moving data. So I'm like, what the world is going on? And I was connected to JBA. I don't even remember which server, but that's the Hong Kong server. So obviously if I connect to that, probably not going to be very good. Not bad, actually, right? Keep in mind that the JBA offices have been using Panzera for several years, and their infrastructure is in place to support that workflow. We have several offices that are being incorporated that aren't quite up to spec from an infrastructure point of view, IT infrastructure. So just kind of be mindful of that. If you notice any slowdown whatsoever in performance, check your controller. Make sure you're set to the correct one. Any other questions or any questions on anything we've covered? Any comments generally speaking? Yes, Michael.
Can we use the smart draft that you spoke about?
Yes. So that's going to be my next implementation, is actually making revisions to the CUI to load it on your machine. I will publish the location of the installation, and then you just have to do a CUI load inside AutoCAD to bring it up. I will definitely make that a priority for everybody in the civil, under the civil group. So that will become part of our standard AutoCAD build moving forward. Any other questions? Seeing none. Go enjoy some pizza. Thank you, guys.